Hey.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Um, I got to say I watched Night Raiders this morning and I actually loved it. It was so different than what I'm used to when it comes to these type of movies.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. Thank you for saying that.
So my first question is, how did the idea come about for the film?
Yeah, I guess I'd just come off a short film back in around 2012, 2013. And it was my first foray into genre. And I had made a dystopian film about monsters meeting up in the future that came from the Cree oral storytelling tradition, which is my background.
Mhm.
And I just found going into the genre space super exciting. And so I wanted to stay in the kind of near future dystopian world, but I also felt like I just wanted to tell a story that somehow dealt with the impact of different colonial policies on Indigenous people. And in this case, it was Canada's residential school system.
That's interesting. And what I found, I like that concept that it combined that those type of values with the dystopian future, and I think that's what makes it different than what we're used to. Because when you see dystopian, people think of Hunger Games or um, some of these other futuristic films. I can't get one off the top of my head, like Insurgent, the Divergent series. That's what I was thinking of. But this was totally different, and I like the fact that the protagonist is actually a mother rather than what we're used to, like the teenagers who are involved. Yet she is a protagonist, but I felt it focused more on the mother, and I think that's made it more interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting as well, because I think even in the story, when you think about children being removed from their parents, you think you might track with the child, but I don't know if it was just because I'm a parent that I felt like I just kept going back to what parents had to give up, and that, the worst thing you can imagine as a parent is the loss of your child. And that's also such a universal fundamental relationship that anyone can like understand. And
Yeah,
so I felt like, yeah, let's focus on that relationship and go from there.
I couldn't agree more. Being a dad of four, I mean, I totally relate to that. Like in no way, shape, or form. I totally relate to it. And I gotta say, the cast here was great. El, like El Majah was awesome.
Yeah.
Brooklyn was really great. I mean, them two really had great chemistry, and then when they're separated, they still like pulled off that emotional aspect of the film. What was it like working with those two?
They're incredible. Elamaya is a director in her own right. So I knew her more as a filmmaker than an actor. And then her name came up as we started casting, and I was like, oh yeah, she's an actor. I kind of forgot about that. And then she totally blew me away in the audition. And by the time we got to callbacks, I was crying in the audition session. And for Brooklyn, we looked all over North America. We engaged a US casting director, Renee Haynes, and we looked at 300 girls from all across North America. And then we finally found Brooklyn in Winnipeg, Manitoba, getting close to production as well. So we were starting to get a bit nervous, but she was brought in for another role. And as soon as I saw her, I was just like, Wasis. And then she came in, and again, we just knew that they were the ones, and their chemistry was amazing. And I think they really spent time together in prep, really like, yeah, spending time rehearsing, but also just, it's so important that they get that time in. I mean, they really are the heart of the movie.
I totally agree. And one scene that shocked me was that Wasis was called a savage, and I was like blown away when I heard that, because that's like how, I understand that people come from different backgrounds and all that, but that's like saying, the N word to a black person, or and I was just like, that part shocked me, because you figure in the dystopian world, I think that's the only sense of racism you really see in the whole entire film, despite the fact that you have the Cree, and then people are like, when she Cree, or when they asked Niska in that one scene.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that was very powerful in a way, and I did like her reaction when she finally just wailed on the girl that called her
Yeah.
that. I love that. I just like felt like that was very a really emotional, impactful scene.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because it is a violent word. It is a word that is meant to dehumanize people, as soon as you call them that, they're no longer seen as human beings. And yet that is a word we've heard time and time again associated with Indigenous people, to dehumanize us. And so that was, yeah, a difficult thing, but I just felt like there was a power behind it. And also there was something devastating about the fact that the majority of the girls in the school were all girls of color. So, there's the young actress who plays Victoria is South Asian. And I just feel like part of the ethos of the academies is that they are taking girls that should have similar shared life experience and should be bonded by that, and then pitting them against each other. And to me, that was part of what made it so devastating. It actually was not a white girl that called her that. It was another person of color.
Right.
And to me, that was also another layer in the scene that that I found really devastating in a way.
That made it more, that's what made it more surprising for me, is that character was the one who called her that. And Amanda Plummer, I like the fact that her character, Roberta, empathized with Niska because her character has a son that went through the whole system. And and then when we see him later on, it was just that scene is just shocking as anything, because
so shocking.
And that must have been really tough. Was that a tough scene to shoot because of the story behind it?
Yeah, for sure. To me, that was one of the harshest and horrible, because that's when the horror of what goes on at the schools comes into acute focus, because I think in the schools I was careful not to be I didn't feel like it was necessary to show there is some violence, but it wasn't gratuitous or girls being smacked or hit or really overt. And so to me, the way that you show the horror of what it is by showing the result. And if a child is willing to turn on their own parents, I mean, the other side has won, and it's horrible to think of that reality. So yeah, it was a really intense scene to shoot, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So how long did shooting take, and what difficulties did you face besides casting at almost the last minute? But what are the difficulties that you faced?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we shot for 23 days. I mean, it was just such a massive undertaking. It was my first feature, but also just there were many aspects that I was doing for the first time. I hadn't worked with this extensive amount of VFX before, even though I'd done a little bit of it in my previous films. And then I also had just never shot quite as much action. And so that whole thing, for me as a director, was new. And then there were sequences that we shot that were so ambitious. I can't believe we even ended up with anything at the end of the 2 days that we shot it. And then also just the topic matter, we're working with a mostly Indigenous cast, and we're talking about things that happened in Canada, but the last residential school only closed in 1996. So this is not a distant past. Everyone has a grandparent, a parent, this, that, it's very present for people. And I think one of the hardest things was just the gravity of what this meant to the cast and how to really hold this and them in the right way.
That's awesome. And I gotta say, this was an excellent feature film debut, and it was I feel like for you, it must have been a great learning experience.
Yeah.
Are you planning any more feature films down the road?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a Netflix thriller right now called Ivy, which is totally different. It's about a smart house that turns on the family, and it's set in this amazing mansion smart house film. So really, really different shooting approach and style, but it's been an incredible experience. So we're in post-production on that right now. So that's sort of the next thing on the horizon.
That's awesome. So Night Raiders is coming out November 19th, and those who like to see something different from a dystopian future point of view will want to see this. And Donnie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the movie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, you take care and stay safe.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.